All right, there we go. Sorry, it's so technical to set up two streams at once. Welcome, everybody. It is November the 20th of 2024, and this is the Profitable Real Estate Agent Plan, and it begins a new cycle. So this is week number one of a 12-week stint through all of the basics of how to set up your business to be a profitable real estate agent plan. I know it's the first week, so we'll probably have more people attend live as they get used to the fact that we're back, because I usually take a couple of weeks off. It's going to be a challenging time through this 12 weeks because we're going to run into obviously a couple holidays. So we'll see how that all plays out. So I'll make sure that I forewarn you if we have to skip a week due to a holiday, including next week. We'll take a look at what that looks like on a Wednesday night. I know it's the day before Thanksgiving, so we'll play that one by ear, see what that looks like. But we might have to skip week 2 next week. Let's see how it goes. But this is the first week, and it's a critical week because it is something probably most of you don't expect me to talk about when you're coming on to a program like this to figure out profitability in the real estate agent plan. It really is very much about the mindset. So when we get into this tonight, I'm going to try to really show you that this isn't some rah-rah technique about how to protect your self-image and all the good stuff we talk about in week 1. I'm going to show you how to practically apply it. It is something that's near and dear to my heart, that it's one thing for people to coach you on what to do and then leave you hanging on how to do it. Certainly this class is a lot of what to do as we go through the 12 weeks. But for those of you that come live, I get into it. And if you have questions on how to do it at the end, feel free to pick my brain, especially Griffin agents, TRC coaching agents. If you're in our ecosphere already, this is a good time to get me one-on-one at the end, because it usually takes me about 20, 30 minutes to get through the subject matter, but then I'm all yours. And I'm happy to answer questions. So if it's something that gets provoked tonight, that is provoking you to ask why or how does that work, we can dig in on that subject or anything. That's the reward of coming live to these things. I know a lot of people can't really be scheduling all over the place. I don't know why not, because this is their business. They should be here trying to figure it out every day, like I still do to this very day. You have to work on your business, and that is what this is all about tonight, okay? So if somebody will just tell me that they're seeing something that now is going to start a slideshow that says how to become empowered even before you start. If somebody would tell me that they see that, we're good to go. Bravo. Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay. So that's the subject. How do you become empowered to be what? To become a profitable real estate agent plan, even if you've never sold a property before? Because I know our good friends out, and my partner, Paul Cantu out in Seattle especially, has a lot of young people or new people to the business, which could be both, right? They're coming into the business and they've never sold a house before. So how in the world could they even be profitable if you've never sold a house before? Well, you can in the imagination. And it's a really critical thing to act as if you are already doing something. So that's the general theme on how we're going to go through this tonight. So we're going to talk a lot about self-image development. And at the end of this, if one of you can remind me, Melanie, I'll put it on you. Remind me to show a series of books that if you want to get into reading the books that influenced a lot of the basics of how I do my business to this very day and influence anything that I teach, I'm going to show a few tabs and make some recommendations on books that I'm going to talk about, especially early on in the 12-week series. You should read or listen to all of these books for yourself so you get into a lot of the micro specifics, because I've listened to or read these books multiple times, but everybody has a different perspective. And sometimes that perspective can help you click. And you can see the genesis for a lot of what I talk about. It is rooted in a very basic understanding of how small business works, how goal setting works, how mind setting works. All of that has been written about and studied by people a lot more intensely focused than I am. And I've just plucked all those good pieces and put them in an order for you to understand. But you want to do your extra reading outside of this course to feel completely self-empowered, not just taking my direction. I'd like you to stand on your own 2 feet and see where this work really comes from, because then it'll also validate it. You'll see it's not just my opinion. It is the organization of a lot of really what to do and how to do that work that I've studied for now 25 years and beyond, because I've always been a nerd for business and figuring things out. So it is an accumulation of mass knowledge. But the goal in this series is to just chunk it up and make it simple each week. And they do all interconnect. I will promise you that you might see something in its individualized piece and you say, well, I came on here to learn about leads. Well, I'm not going to get you there. So it's not going to happen until you learn the pieces that lead up to that section of running a proper business. By the way, if you want to go back and look at past episodes, you can certainly go to the Realty Classroom on YouTube, where I try to stream and copy all these. I think I missed, or one recording got screwed up, but for the most part, you'll go back and see live streams. Just, search the live streams on that YouTube channel. They're all recorded over there, and I think they're all set to public view. If not, somebody can tell me next week, and or in 2 weeks, maybe if we skip next week for Thanksgiving, then we will jump on that. Okay. But my goal is to just get you real information, actionable information, but it does take a while to train your brain to get it in there. Why? Because when you're training your brain to learn something, you don't really have a synaptic highway that's sheathed together yet. You're building that, meaning I know a system cold. I might use it. And by the way, that's the great thing about being taught by me, is that I'm not making this up. This is actually what I do week to week to week. And I'm just fresh off a Saturday of 3 listing presentations back to back to back. I know you want to know how I got there, right? And I'm fresh off of multiple open houses. I'm fresh off of several double-ended deals from those open houses. I do this. And I know how to do this in the most efficient way. And I am telling you, over these 12 weeks, I reveal exactly the things that I do. So it's important to understand this is not a theoretical thing. Also, don't cherry pick it. It is a full orchestra. When you learn how to run a small real estate agent business for yourself, it's a full orchestration of a lot of things. So that can make your animal brain shut down very easily. Because if you don't understand something and you're already in the business, say, I'm just going to keep doing it the way I'm doing it. Don't do that. Always try to push yourself into a greater understanding of how does a business really work at its most efficient level. And that's my obsession, because I just can't afford to waste time. I have 5 kids, I have multiple businesses, and I have a life I want to live. So I'm not about wasting my time. I'm about making it the most efficient. And if you listen to me, you're really just walking in those footsteps that I've already figured out. I have tripped, I have fallen off of into the abyss and had to recover myself trying to figure out how a business works. So I've already done a lot of the blood, sweat, and tears. Your job is to be trainable/teachable. That's your job. Your job is to be open-minded. Listen to this. The best way to learn is also to, very close by where you are, grab a legal pad, grab a pencil. I like mechanical pencils with an eraser, and get into writing down ideas. I call it capturing fireflies in a jar. When a light bulb goes off when I say something, stop for a second, write it down, and capture it on paper, so that later you can come in and drill it around with me and try to figure it out, so that that sheathing begins to get tightened together, so that the brain is being trained to remember in the heat of the moment. Oh, I know what he said about what to say when I'm telemarketing. Oh, I know what he said to act as if I've already been in this listing presentation. That's what training is. It's trying to make it a permanent place in your mind so that you can recall it in the heat of the moment where you need to apply it. And that's what kicks this off, right? So we're going to talk a lot about self-image development inside what's called the theater of the mind. I will tell you, my first, most important, and most significant learning that I'm suggesting you do outside of this course is to read the book Psycho Cybernetics, written by a guy by the name of Maxwell Maltz. And I'll get into the details, but that's going to be my highest and best recommendation ever to anybody. Teach it to your kids, share it with your friends, family. It is a real how to use your mind. It's not, I love Tony Robbins, by the way, so I don't want to sound like I'm knocking him. But sometimes a lot of that can be rah-rah in the heat of the moment. And nobody ever says, listen, here's a mindset tool that you can use anytime once you understand how it works. And that's what we're going to get into tonight, is that you have the ability to use this tool that we all come born with anytime, anywhere, for any application, but to become a profitable real estate agent, right? So when it comes to this concept of the theater of the mind is a place where you can visualize and create your ideal self-image. This is really, really an important concept. And let me go off a little bit here about self-image. In the book Psycho Cybernetics, which sounds like a crazy, it almost sounds like a cult that Tom Cruise would belong to every time I say it, right? Psycho, mindset, cybernetics, Greek word for steering systems. So let that sink in, right? It is a mind steering system. That's what Psycho Cybernetics is. And that's what we're trying to do. And really, it begs the question, can we really steer our mind to get what we want? And I'll talk to you a little bit about how I use it a lot of different ways, especially having 5 kids and coaching them through life. I'll tell you how some of them apply it as well to become what they want to become. I'll tell you how I use it to buy investment properties. There are some things I'll talk about there, but it's incredible, like, to realize that you will be limited by this self-image that you have, or you will be able to work with that self-image to expand it, right? So that's where you have to see yourself differently. That's what you're going to stretch and change, right? So profitable is one thing. We all want to be profitable, and it conjures up the idea of managing a business too. But what we'll teach in this course, especially the next session, is we'll teach that as a profitable real estate agent and a business person, you have to see yourself being a business person. You are not an employee. We have multiple new agents in our group, and that's the first thing I tell them is, I am your business partner. I am a company that offers a system, and we train you in that. We coach you against that. In the heat of the moment, we mentor you, but you are running your own small business. So it's like we are a consultancy business colliding with your real estate agent business, and we're partnering up to make money together, to help people together, right? So that's what we're doing. So you have to understand that that's the self-image that's necessary, and that you are a small business owner the minute you get into this, unless you are one of the very, very, very rare people. Redfin agents are an example. I believe they have employee status, so they actually work for Redfin, whereas most of us are independent contractors working in conjunction with a brokerage just because the law sets it up that way. But more importantly, you've made a business decision to hook your business to mine, for example, with Griffin Agents. You've made a decision there, and I've made a decision to hook mine to yours so that together we can see ourselves being profitable together. But I have to come to all my agents and say, but you have to see yourself that way. And you have to understand what it is to be a committed small business person. And you have to understand what it is to see yourself, self-image, see yourself working on your business, not just in it. Sitting here with me at night, if you're in the East Coast at 7 o'clock at night, and being disciplined enough to show up live and work on it, or like Melanie and Aaliyah showing up at my open house multiple times to watch me do what I do if we get the chance, and if not, to ask me questions, to role play. They see themselves already being professional, whether they know it or not, because they see themselves coming to meet me at these places to work on it. That's an example of what's possible when you're not doing something physical, right? So you can use the theater of the mind, and this is what Maxwell Maltz recommends in his book. You can see yourself, especially late night. For example, tonight, if you're here live, practice this. Go find your cozy chair, or sit up in bed before you really start to drift off to sleep. Lower the lights. Whatever makes you calm softens all the consciousness of trying to live. And stop thinking about, like, am I going to get hit by the bus when I cross the street today? Am I taking a left or a right down this street? Oh my gosh, I forgot to do this. That's all the busyness of the conscious mind. So the best time to program the self-image in the theater of the mind is when you are relaxed. When you are in a relaxed, not quite meditative state, but similar. Just relax down into that moment where you are eyes closed and you are in a room that you create, and you are watching yourself up on a stage. Now, remember, you own the theater of your mind. You are the director. You are the manager. You are all these things. So you can make that person, you, enter from stage left or right, wherever you want, and have that person looking professional, talking professionally. And then you can imagine that person going out to list a median or above priced listing. Not saying I have to cut my teeth on rentals, or I have to cut my teeth on buyers only. Not saying that at all. Saying I am successful already. I am somebody who lists and sells median priced houses. I am somebody who runs a professional open house and knows how to properly make that relationship with the buyer double end deals. I am that person. That all happens in the mind. You have to believe it there first, because if you don't, what happens is the animal brain takes over, and all this angst and this worry and this emotion takes over, and you default to killing something. And that's why I teach prospects pursued, run away, because all of a sudden the animal in you freaks out. You're no longer strategic. You're no longer acting in the self-image of professional, and you're chasing business away. See, there's no scarcity of business. I can prove that to you all in about 3 minutes. Go into your MLS and look at how many hundreds of millions sold in your MLS in a year. And you only need a small fraction of that to be a profitable real estate agent. So there is no scarcity. It's just a matter of whether you will create the self-image to be a successful, profitable real estate agent. That's it. You have to see it in the theater of the mind before it ever happens, because I can teach you this stuff in my sleep, blindfolded, like a Houdini in a box. I can teach it to you. It's just not rocket science. But what will interfere with your ability to accept it is that thing in between me and you, and that is your self-image. You see, the way that you see yourself is the way that you see the entire world. It's the lens through which we see everything. I mean, if you're trying to find, a partner, you will attract the partner or detract the partner based on how you see yourself. So if you want to be successful athletically, it will be the same thing. How do you see yourself physically, health-wise? What do you see? Because if you see something that you don't like, then the great news is you can change it in the theater of the mind. I am this physicality, not the one I currently carry around, but I'm this. And I keep repeating it. And then all of a sudden, the craziest things happen. The how to get from here to there finds you. And that's the big interesting thing about this, right? So what I'm saying is your self-image can either limit or empower you depending on your beliefs and perceptions, right? So you believe that you are this type of a business person. You believe before ever selling your first property that this is who you are. You have these beliefs. And worse, you have a perception of how this business works. And I'll guarantee you it's way off the reality. That's just a fact, because you're just not studied enough in it. And I'm talking to you from a perspective of a guy that coaches a lot of multi like high-end producers. People, I've got a couple of people that sell $2 million themselves, like they're animals, they're machines, right? But yet they're not profitable to the extent they should be. Their margins are terrible. Their commission rate is horrible, right? Why? Because they have a belief and a perception that the way that they get all that volume is discount, low-end volume, buyer agency off the internet. They have all these beliefs and perceptions, when the truth is the business doesn't work in an optimal, profitable way like that at all. For example, to relate it to the business, the way that this business becomes most profitable for any individual agent is for that agent to learn how to list and then, of course, sell properties in the geography within which they really want to do business, and stay focused on acquiring listings at or above the median price, because a median is a middle number in a statistical distribution. If you went back to my example about MLS, you would look at all of the properties that sold in calendar 2023 or soon to be 2024, and you would say there were this many sales and the middle number was this. And there is no reason that any of you can't go home tonight, turn down the lights, get into a relaxed state and say, I am a profitable real estate agent who regularly lists and sells median and above properties. Now, you don't even have to know how you do that yet. You will know when I'm done with you in 12 weeks, right? And if you're a Griffin agent, you have access to all the stuff on Teachable Quickly, so you can take the accordion of time and squeeze it down and be privately coached by us. Sure. But for any of you, slow it down over 12 weeks to get up above it and see, oh, I get it. To be a profitable real estate agent, I have to develop a self-image that says, I'm going for listings before I do anything else. And if I want to be profitable, why not me? Why can't I be at least a middle of the road? Let's take a distribution. Why couldn't I be one like deviation to the lower end of the median, one deviation to the higher end, so that I'm really kind of averaging myself at the median sale price? Why can't any of you see yourself doing that? Because you have a misbelief and a misperception about what's possible generally, and worse, because your clouded self-image says you could never do that. Period. That's how important this subject becomes. It becomes absolutely critical to understand you are that limiting self-image and limiting belief in perception. So we have to cleanse that. That's the whole point of this first week. We have to understand, and you have to believe that you can cleanse it, because it is possible. You've heard stories all your life about a person going from the bottom to the top, and it just seems how they got lucky. They were born in the right, geosphere, whatever. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. It's all just a lie we tell ourselves to do what? To protect the current self-image that we have. And here's the scariest thing about a self-image and self-belief and self-perception. It's largely developed when you're young by other people, whether it's parents, siblings, harsh kids in school, whatever it is. We begin to develop these negative beliefs about ourselves so that we lock in a self-image, and that's what we carry into the future. And that's how we behave currently in all walks of our life. And it's just, the good news is it's just not right. It is a programmable subconscious that we can get into. So let's get into that, right? So to change this self-image, you have to change a lot of things, but specifically habits, thought, actions, and thoughts. This is why I keep going back to the theater of the mind in a relaxed state. Change your thoughts about what could be possible. And even if you don't believe it's possible for you yet, just believe it's possible and create some alter ego of yourself that says it's possible for her, not the real physical me today, but it's possible for her. It's possible for him. It's possible for they, right? Like whatever you see yourself as, it's possible to be a real estate agent who's profitable for any of you, unless you tell yourself otherwise. So the thought actually leads this list, because to take an action step, you've already taken it. If you're here live, that's an action step to become that. Now I'm telling you kind of how to do this tonight, not waiting, and getting Psycho-Cybernetics and beginning to listen to it and read it. It was written by a guy who was a plastic surgeon who used to fix people's faces, and they would look in the mirror and say, I'm not different at all. What? Your nose was on the side of your head after the car accident, and I put it right down the middle. Not only did I bring it back to where it was before, but I made it look better looking. What do you mean? Well, I'm no different. That's a self-image issue. And that's what he learned over time, was that you could do plastic surgery on somebody, but if they weren't working on their self-image, the way they saw themselves, regardless of the physical change, was the same. So let's talk about elective surgery, which obviously he did a lot of too. It would be the same thing. And then some other people would, along with the surgery, would completely believe they were somebody else and would be ecstatic with the new them, right? So it's not just the physical changes, it's the mental behavior that goes along with it that he discovered. And this is why he said, you really can program this, but it starts with the thinking. And the thinking is based around, this is basic information. What's the median price in the area within which you'd love to list properties? What is it? And then to go home and watch yourself doing it. And even if you haven't, been part of my personal coaching group at TRC, or you're one of our agents who can watch me talk for an hour about going through a listing presentation, it doesn't matter, because you don't need to know that right now. In fact, when I get to the unique selling proposition class, I actually show you very specifically the information that we use to set ourselves up to give a listing presentation that is so simple that even the rookies and the younger people at our group are going out and being successful with it, because they don't keep thinking that they can't execute a simple plan. So we've developed over time a lot of simplicity to the how to do this stuff so that the actions aren't complicated. So that when you talk to a seller over the phone, a seller who visits an open house and is a neighbor, a cold call to somebody, when you begin to take those actions, you begin to understand some rules and laws to be different. So that's how you take the self-image, you connect it to a unique selling proposition, which, like I said, I think is week 3. You start to connect the pieces. Oh, I see how this orchestra works. But if I have only the first chair violin and I believe, but then I don't go develop, a unique selling proposition. And later in the course, I don't understand what kind of words to use to convince somebody to pay attention to me. It becomes an orchestra where we have a violin, a cello, an oboe, on and on it goes until the music is finally tuned and we're running a profitable real estate agent business. Always looking for the tweaks, right? The violin always needs to be fine-tuned, right? Everything needs to be fine-tuned in the orchestra. It can get out of tune, whatever it might be. But again, the thoughts precede this, and you see yourself taking these actions, keeping in touch with it. And then what's cool about it is they become habits. So when I go into a listing presentation or go to one, I don't even have to think, because the wiring in my brain is so tight. My brain is saying, don't you dare cheat. Don't you dare cheat. Don't you resist the urge to just talk to somebody because you like them and there's a connection. You stay focused. I went to 3 of them this weekend, and every one of them was different. One listing presentation was basically given outside the house after we had viewed it because there were tenants. We went across the street. I showed him the simplicity of the unique selling proposition. He loved it. He's a banker. He understood the math. He took it. He said, we're good to go, guys. I'm going with you guys, right? January 1st, we're good. The next one, I was standing in a house where the gal had passed. She was a hoarder. We could barely get through. He had 5 or 6 people that were in there with him, trying to buy it just as is. We spread out some of her hoarding stuff on an old bureau, and I gave a listing presentation there. And I gave them very specific advice on what to do and what not to do. I did not break it. Same thing, 2 different places. The last one was a true sit down at a corner table overlooking the ocean, right? Beautiful little spot, condo overlooking, the airport in Boston, beautiful spot. And we went through it slowly and methodically. But my habit to stay inside the same rhythm each time made it a day where I was really only in each place just about 45 minutes, except the last one. I spent a little bit more time because she had experienced loss and there was a heaviness to it. And so we sat there and we had a few laughs, and I called a common person we knew. So I took my time a little bit, but habitually I was following right inside the guidelines, action-wise, same 7-step plan. And all of this, I saw myself doing that day successfully. I saw myself moving, and I was all over the city, from one spot to the next through traffic. I saw myself doing this successfully. And what does successfully mean? Sure, it's great to hear I got one of them already, but most importantly, I know something's really important to my self-image. My whole system is predicated on me leaving people better than I found them, regardless of whether they choose to do business with me or not. Always, I ask myself that. That's the self-image, because the belief system in this company is predicated on a principle I have learned: to be a person for others. And my perception is that everybody that's in this realm with me behaves that same way. So that this goodwill is spent out there so heavily, which makes everybody so unique, that all of a sudden you're all telling me stories of success where you empowered other people and they loved you for it and gave you their business, right? So that's how you start to get in this place. So we've got this theater of the mind practice. The reason is because we've got to, talk about whether we have misbeliefs and misperceptions, and we have to attack them. And then we have to take these steps. Thinking, action steps become habits, right? By using positive affirmations and visualizations like this, you can reprogram what? Drum roll, the subconscious mind. So the tool that we're using to do all of this is the subconscious mind. I'll go back to what I said before. One of the hardest times to do any thinking and mindset work is during the day. because you have to be conscious about all of the hunting and gathering you need to do to survive in life, right? Whatever that is. And you have to beware the modern day saber-toothed tiger, which is making sure you press, the button across the sidewalk, which is making sure you look left or right before you pull out with your own car into traffic, which is making sure you eat 2-3 meals a day, drink water. You get the point. You're consciously busy. The brain has to go and survive all day long. So it's very difficult to do any programming on something that's more global. The systems management, and this is how it relates to systems in business too. We manage ourselves at a very tactical level all day, but how often have you ever sat still, think about this, and thought strategically about how you're behaving throughout that day? Because we all wake up and say, well, I'm not getting my goals out of life, or I'm not living the life I want. Well, great. Did you ever really write down who you wanted to be physically, financially, emotionally? Did you ever write that down? Because the subconscious mind needs to know where you're going before it can ever find the resources to help you get there. You don't like the way you are physically? Great. Write down, I don't like who I am. My ideal body weight is this. My skin tone should look like this. I want my hair like this. You start writing that stuff down, and guess what happens? The next thing you know, you don't even know how you got there, but you're in Whole Foods walking up and down the aisles being curious. Geez, I've always been eating food that I've never read a label before. Let me read this label. Whoa, high fructose corn syrup, right? Well, you're not going to find that in Whole Foods. But like I'm saying, now all of a sudden you're looking at, I still like ice cream. Yeah. Real sugar, real milk, not all these other things. This is what RFK is trying to, push forward. So now all of a sudden your subconscious mind has you going to places that it already knows are out there because you've driven by Whole Foods 15 times, but you've never stopped in there and really thought for yourself because you never started setting a new goal. Well, what's the difference between that and your business goal? Well, I haven't been able to sell anything, and, none of this has worked. Whoa. What did you do to physically put together a package of information that if you've known me long enough through these 12 weeks, I've shown you how to make a package of information. Did you ever sit down and make one for a seller? Did you? Because there's the action. You thought you wanted this thing. You didn't write it down. We'll talk about that next week. But you didn't write it down because then you didn't really tune into what I was saying. It's okay. No problem. But don't sit there and make excuses at a conscious level when you didn't even program the subconscious to fight back, to grow, to be more successful. You have to start programming the subconscious mind. Let me speak to that for a second too, right? So before I get into the DISC personality profile, I, over time, come to these periods of times where I'm in my investor mode. I want to make an investment in a real estate property. Tough for me over the years of the recession and raising 5 kids and school costs and all that. But recently I decided that I wanted to buy another building. I like retail buildings, preferably. I grew up in the retail business. I can relate to those types of tenants. And I drove by a building that had been basically abandoned for about the last 10 years. And the circumstance is simply because there was a big, powerful convenience store chain out this way called Cumberland Farms. I know the family, multi-generational. I know the boys whose family owned it, and they owned it, and they sold it for a huge number to a private equity firm with some investors overseas. And this thing was just sitting there. And I knew they were never going to do anything because now their concept is with gas. And I just kept driving by every day. And I said, I will own that. I need to own that. I want to own that. And to the point where I started to get anxious, I'm like, well, I'm not doing anything. Where's my action step? So one day I called Kathy at the office. She's my telemarketer extraordinaire for multiple years now. And I said, Kathy, do me a favor. I keep procrastinating this. We call this broker and see if he can get me in. Next thing I know, 2 days later, I'm in the building. It's in dire straits, but I'm feeling like I'm looking at Lazarus. Now, I'm no Jesus, but I feel like I can bring this thing back from the dead. So I just keep programming myself to say this. Now I get into, okay, guys, this is priced too high. Come on, you're sitting here with me. Have they been sitting here long enough? You want deed restrictions on this thing. It needs a complete rehab. Let's get to a number. So we finally get to a number, a letter of intent gets signed where I'm able to tie it up and start to do some due diligence. Blah, 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 blah. A year plus later, I own the building. And it was just all manifested by me just thinking through this. Now, again, I didn't really need to do it at night at my bed because I've developed this awareness that that subconscious tool is available to me day or night. Doesn't matter. By the way, at nighttime, right before you go to bed, that's when the subconscious really goes to work. It goes through the massive data bank of everything you've ever been exposed to. And Napoleon Hill makes a case that even if you've never been exposed to, like how to raise money, for example, how to talk to a bank, it's still out there in the ether. And if you just go let your subconscious go try to suck it in, at least it'll give you some direction. I know it sounds crazy to you, but I have used this for years and I am all about practicality. Do not BS me with some hocus pocus. I am telling you, I own this building because I programmed my subconscious to own it. And at first I didn't really know, like, am I going to get a partner to raise the equity piece of it or whatever? And then long story short, I had some equity hiding in plain sight in one of my other buildings and pulled it out and bought the building. Right. And then just did way better than I thought because all of a sudden everybody was like, Lazarus is back from the dead. The lights are on, for lease signs are up. I had a line trying to come in there to rent this space for me. And people are gutting the interior and spending way more than I even spent rehabbing the exterior. Mind-boggling that that's out there for all of us. But it is. You could do it with one single house for yourself and say, wow, there's great opportunity there. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to try to program the subconscious to help me find the resources. Next thing you know, you're talking to a banker. The banker's talking to you about equity partners, whatever. You don't know where the journey takes you. That's what's incredibly powerful about it. So apply it here over the 12 weeks to understand you don't really know how this business works, but you got one resource that's pretty solid in me because I'm already doing it. So if you walk in my already pre-printed footprints in this business, you have a high probability for success. But there are many other things beyond me that you can be resourceful. Just be careful of them, that they really are not the gurus or the false prophets out there that don't do this every day, right? That's the key. I'm not saying listen to me exclusively. In fact, I'm going to tell you 4 or 5 books that you should read that have nothing to do with me directly, nor the business, but they are universal principles to help open that subconscious mind, right? To really say, wow, I learned about mind steering systems. Where's that going to take me next? That's how you start to grow roots. But there's another section to this. You do have to understand that there is some pre-programming, right? So let me just talk about Dr. William Moulton Marston. He actually developed the lie detector test, right? For the FBI, or used by the FBI, et cetera, many others. But the point being is that there is a psychology to all of us, the way that we are wired. And it's the strangest thing. We hate to think that we're not that complicated, but we're really not that complicated because we can be distilled into these categories. And I forget what it is. I want to tell you, it's like 26 to 28 questions where you say, I am most like this adjective and least like this. And it will spit out a profile called a DISC personality profile. Let me get into this for a second, okay? What does DISC stand for? Dominance, influence, steadiness, and conscientious. So I think Tony Robbins, speaking of which, has a free version of this on his website still, where you can go and take it, or there'll be places where you can buy it. Highly recommend it. At least take this once. When I took this for the first time, I was a very high I, very close to that D, and I was almost exactly mirror negative numbers on S and C, meaning my natural tendency was to be influential. Slightly below that by 1 point was dominant, and then negative to match I was as deeply negative on the C as I was high on the I. And then same with the steadiness, right? Well, that causes a dilemma for us as profitable real estate agent business people. Because if you're a business person and you own the business and you are the business, well, there's going to be clearly a requirement for all of these facets of a personality to be successful. So you have to just simply understand, once you take this inventory, you are going to trend under pressure towards your natural style. So for example, presumably, if I got nervous, I'm going to talk a lot, or I'm just going to be very short to this, and cut to the chase. If I'm stressed, I'm going to say, nope, I'm not doing that. I'll do this. It can sound obnoxious, but that's what a D does under pressure, right? Good news about my D personality, it can make a decision, right? Good news about my influence side of me, I can sell. But those two things, albeit my natural strengths, can also be a weakness. If you're too short with somebody who's opposite that, right? Let's say somebody who's conscientious wants to know how to cross all the T's, dot all the I's. We have a client like that right now. They're very, very paranoid about representation because they got caught up all in all this noise online, and they're super, super smart people who work in data science, both of them, chemical data science, really, really like very, very detail oriented. The old me would have been like, oh, they suck as clients and forget them, right? And I would never do that now. Now I would say, oh, I get it. So they're high C personalities. I told Laura, go online and get them the data from our MLS that explains how these options are and why the MLS feels like it's legally protected when it does that. Give that to the C personality. So see, I can recognize that C, also knowing it's not me, but develop a necessary patience to deal with that person, right? The same thing is with people who wants a steady process. I can't just give them my unique selling proposition package of information once and presume anything. I need to know that maybe I just gave it to them and they didn't really have a chance to go through everything. So I have to recognize that behavior, or do they seem to be behaving in a steady pattern? And then, of course, the people that I naturally like most are probably mirrors of who I am. But sometimes they're not the best clients because you're too alike, right? So you have to bring yours down. Maybe if somebody else is trying to be dominant, you might have to bring your D down and not meet them up there. But if they're dinging around and they're silently begging to be led, say, okay, good, I heard you. Now, please humor me, hear me. It's not the way it works. Here's the way it works. And I understand all of this at a conscious level because I've studied it and I've programmed my subconscious to say, remember, temper yourself, be patient, because I can tell you, I have lost profit, keeping with the theme of this course, I have lost profit when I have lost patience. And I have had to go back to my subconscious to say, remind me, subconscious, when I'm feeling impatient, to be patient, because the ultimate profitable real estate agent is patient. And my patience just got tried recently with somebody who all of a sudden their D came exploding out of a box that I hadn't seen before, was completely obnoxious, know-it-all-ish, and I just ate it. And it was hard, but I just ate it. And all of a sudden it diffused the situation so much that he was apologizing to me. I wouldn't do business with him again, to tell you the truth. It's an expired listing, way overpriced, but I wanted the pictures and I thought he was going to do what I told him about adding a dock, et cetera, to the property. He didn't. So it's not likely when somebody's not coachable or teachable like that, that I'll do business. But I was proud of myself for creating that new self-image of patience. But it was applied in the recognition of the context of, these DISC personality profile, where I said, oh, the D in me, it's like a namaste moment, in yoga, right? The peacefulness in me sees the peacefulness in you. Well, the high D in me sees the high D in you. I got you. Unfortunately, it's not going to work. We're at an impasse, but I got you. I understand you. I appreciate where you're coming from. We just have to agree to disagree, right? So, or influence. You can be in a room with somebody who needs to talk and you let him go until you cut him off, right? You got to cut him off. So those things become very, very important. Next, the DISC personality profile can help you understand your natural behavior and communication tendencies, like I just said. I understand naturally who I am. Understanding your DISC profile can help you communicate more effectively with others by adjusting your communication and interaction. And I just gave you real examples of that. And I have adjusted it, and I am doing one right now. In fact, I do it every time now. When you see me coach, I probably sound much more like a DI because it sounds aggressive and it sounds, very forthright because I'm in a rhythm. But if you saw me on Saturday sitting with a widow who's 80 years old, I was very small. I was very soft. I sat in the corner. I tried to really just make sure I didn't upstage her because she was stressed. and she wanted me to know she worked for a legal secretary. She was a legal secretary working for a lawyer. Awesome. So you probably understand a lot of this, right? That softened her because she didn't, but it softened her, right? And then, I said, you probably want to run some of this stuff by them, but here's what I would suggest to talk. So I empowered her with information, but I had to really soften all of this information. But I stayed very, very focused on the net sheet. And I talked to her about what she would walk away with so she could see that. So the stress of splitting the proceeds of this, she was not married to her partner, the man who died, and he left his half of this property, even though they were deeded together. He left his half to his daughter, and that really put this whole thing into a tizzy. So my job is to play the mitigator between these two people, and so far so good. But all of that was adjusted based on what these two personality types were, and really trying to empower them with information and really breaking them a little bit out of their emotional state into their true heartfelt state, where they both actually, at least the older lady, said some kind things about her. So I was able to diffuse the room by saying, listen, I don't know for whatever it's worth, Marilyn, but Elaine had some really kind things to say about you at the end of this, right? And all of a sudden, she just went silent on the other end of the phone, right? So everybody could get back to the hurt place of loss and maybe just get beyond it, right? So by leveraging your strengths and improving your weaknesses, like I talked about, you can just become a more effective team member too. And that means, internally, when you have people you're working with, or you have, and consider the sellers and their family, your team, or the closing coordinator or the broker, if you just understand all of this and you apply it, and you can really bring that self-image into a very professional place. In this context, professional means in control and respectful, and not just getting nervous and just, steady people can say, well, can you repeat that? Well, because you told me that, and you're just overwhelming a D or I because you're not being respectful, that the DI is just not going to process you like that. So if you have somebody who's a leader of the team saying, listen, would you mind just humoring me? I know I'm a high S personality, and I kind of like to go through this again, even though I've heard it. That's how you set up as a good team member, because you express it rather than just throwing up all over somebody. Could you say that again? We have to understand that most of the aberration in our personality type that ruins business opportunity is us acting in angst. And in angst, you cheat towards your personality type. And if you're not cheating towards that and communicating with somebody who's a mirror of you, you're probably going to agitate a different type of personality. And you're going to say, why did that person run away? And you're going to blame them, and you're just not going to have been conscious of this kind of stuff. Now you are. Okay. Lastly, committing to constant improvement is what we do here, right? We really want to get into this Japanese term for constant improvement called Kaizen. Toyota was very famous for this slow, steady progression of improvement. And they just, like, if you think about the Toyota Prius, during the recession, I didn't feel it was right to pull up to a house and a BMW or whatever, I was driving at the time when the recession came. So I went out and bought a Prius. And this is the recession. So we're talking 2010-ish. It's a long time ago, right? Well, back then, Toyota's Prius was getting 52 miles to the gallon. It was a staggering achievement at that point in time. You can look around for all these hybrid cars now. I mean, certainly you get some plug-ins that can, go a certain distance. But the achievement of Toyota for that kind of technology many, many years ago, they're just light years above in the development. That's why I have two friends that actually own Toyota dealerships. They are wildly financially successful because the product is just so refined. Again, it's largely an entry-level product. They know their place unless you go up to the up brand of Lexus. But they're just, some of the technology in there is incredible because over time, Toyota has committed to Kaizen, the long game, the slow, continuous improvement. See, a lot of you will get impatient for success and you just won't stick with it. And I can tell you firsthand that especially over the last 12 years or so, since I started the Realty Classroom coaching brand outside of being, part of somebody else's, it's just been staggering what I've learned and applied in my own business. I have to pinch myself when I'm walking around talking about double ending a $3.4 million listing last month, going out last, on when was there? Monday, going into 3.5, and she has another 3 to sell too because they're moving to Spain. That's another $6.5 million, right? Talking to somebody who owns a waterfront property worth of $7 million. That didn't exist in my life until I slowly, continuously improved not just my mindset, but then practically how I would talk to these people at the high end, right? So by focusing on continuous improvement, you can make small incremental changes that add up over time. I talk to Kathy Dillon, my telemarketer, about this a lot. I say, listen, when times are slow on the phone and nobody's answering, don't say something's changed. Like, oh, we can't get people on the phone anymore. Nobody answers anymore. That's your mindset. It's not true, because over the course of 52 weeks, of the weeks that you work, if you just execute the plan, what you're going to find is that there are weeks when everything flows beautifully, and then the tide goes out again. And you just have to fight through it. Work on your business a little bit more when things are slow, I told her. And so that's what's happened. And she always comes back and said, you were right. Look at my book of business. By the way, those are her 2 deals. 3 million, 3.5 million are on the books. Those are real sales that will happen in calendar 25, right? They will happen. So she begins the year with 6.5 million of, not guaranteed, nothing's guaranteed, but 6.5 million of business on the books that's solid, let alone the rest of it. And that's because she started by just, zero and continuously understanding and improving more and more and more, which, by the way, together we improved the process. I said, how could I help you telemarketers pull people through a little bit more? Why don't I do this? When you get a yes to the package of information that you're sending, why don't I go to that house immediately, take a picture of it, look at the neighborhood, give you a couple talking points about it, so that when you call them back, not only were you proactive in the initial call, proactive in getting the mailer, but I was proactive in looking at the house, giving you some talking points. That's 3 proactive steps in a world that's gotten so reactive and everybody expects business to fall in their lap. We've done 3 things. Will that improve? And I am telling you, it was amazing how many more houses I was able to get into, because they would say, Danny went by it. He really liked it. He'd love to poke his head in. Listing presentation, just like that, right? And that's why we had 3 of them in a weekend, because it was a logical next step. He's been by it. He saw it. You've seen the information. You've vetted us. You know you're real. If he comes in, he's going to tell you what to do and what not to do to get top dollar, and he'll do an analysis. And that's exactly what happened with this banker. He loved it. He was actually appreciative. I said, listen, see this basement down here? You have your washer dryer down here, right? You got to get this thing cleaned up, bright lights, put some carpet on the floor, make this feel like this is safe. And he says, yeah, that's a great idea. Geez, I didn't even think of it. He said, what about the outside? You agree? Yeah, like fix these bricks. You just create a beautiful parking space, but you got ugly cement steps right next to it. Fix that to match, right? Oh, by the way, here's the math. I didn't mind your 1.4 asking price. Yes, it's the top of the food chain, but I think we get somebody who's going to live in the bottom and rent the top because they can qualify that. Well, I don't know if you know, I'm a banker. You're exactly right. So boom, it was just like we were on it. And that was all because my team and I, each Monday, were asking, what could we do a little bit better to make this even a little bit better, right? And now we're working, 1 minute we're working on the aesthetic of the website. Then we realize our packages could be upgraded. So we start to get better photography. It's just this constant and never-ending game of small incremental improvements that just improves the whole thing over time, and it becomes fun, right? But the key to constant improvement is to establish a culture of commitment and accountability. I'm committed to this game worth playing. It's my life. This profit runs my life. It determines the quality of my life. I was able to take 4 out of 5 of my kids, only because one has a brand new dog, do they not all go, to see my son who's in school over in London, right? Because my system allows me, the continuous improvement of my system allows the business to continue while I'm gone 4 or 5 days. And we have extra profit in spite of these crazy school bills to take a trip as a family, right? And everybody had a glorious time in London, a world-class city, because we're committed to this. We're accountable to it all the other weeks of the year, so that when we want to enjoy ourselves, that commitment and accountability has paid us and has given us that freedom to do those things, right? So by continuously improving your processes and your systems, very key words, you can create a streamlined and more efficient organization. I can't tell you how important it is to hear that last line before we conclude here, right? It is this streamlined, efficient process that gives you what? Time management. And that's one of the most important things that I have coached for years. Because for years I said, what is the most common theme when you all say I'm struggling? Time management. Well, one, time management often comes from you're scatterbrained and you don't know what to do. You need to be taught by somebody who knows how a business works, what to do. So if you don't know what to do with your time, that's your first problem. But once you get going, you cannot wing it. You can't hear a good idea here and think you're going to apply it outside the context of the system in its entirety. That's not what a streamlined process is. A streamlined process is a Toyota assembly line, a Tesla assembly line that is beaten on to be crazy efficient, to save time, energy, effort, money, everything, to put out the best product at the end of the line. And that's what we're trying to produce here at Griffin, a happy Griffin. That's what we call him. A happy past client who's likely to repeat and refer and is more than willing to give us a glowing review because the efficiency of the system was so empowering to them, took so much cognitive burden out of their life that they just see us as the saviors, right? And that's how it gets applied. So, voila, that's that, right? Let me stop the share here and let's see. It's a long one in this first week because we have a lot that we talk about there. So let's get into, let me see if I did promise you a tab with some books. Let me see if I can find where I have those books hidden. Let me see this. Hang on, shrink this down. Come back to here. Bear with me, I'm just juggling a lot of stuff that shows on the screen at once, and I'm going to show you these books. So okay, let me see if this will work. Okay, so here's the first one. This is the one we talked about, okay? Let me see, that's the Zoom app. Let me just make sure I show this on the other app too. Hang on. Sorry, like I said, just lots of windows here. Okay, there we go for the YouTube recording. So that's Psycho-Cybernetics, okay? That's what the book looks like. There is another version of this I used to recommend called The New Psycho-Cybernetics because my mentor's marketing mentor, Dan Kennedy, bought the rights to this book. What I would say is I think he stripped out some pieces of it, even though it's very, very good. Get this original one. And if you're not a reader, get the audiobook. It's very easy to go for a walk with this, listen to this. I mean, it's really good, right? So I think that's really important. Because we talk a lot about influence in this course, and I just talked about it in the context of a DISC personality profile, you really need to know, especially as we get into some of the later stuff about scripting and whatnot, you're going to need to know why I am a huge believer in laws of psychology, because we all like to believe people make a lot of conscious decisions and they don't. They make a lot of subconscious decisions and they're easily influenced. Well, there is just a stellar book, Charlie, Munger, God rest his soul, Warren Buffett's partner. This is on his recommended list. A lot of smart people have fallen into this and understand the power of the laws of influence, and they are throughout my entire system. So I'm highly recommending that. Next week, we get into a lot of talking about Brian Tracy, old timer now, Brian Tracy, but just did an enormity of writing about goals. And these are very, very simple books to read and understand. And so as far as his book is concerned, Goals, there are some good anecdotes as to how to goal set. That's where my yellow pad methodology came from, by the way. Also, like setting that North Star that is in writing for all Griffin agents and TRCers, we have the GCI Goal Tracker. And then lastly, if you really want to see one of Brian Tracy's great works about time management, this is really good, right? Eat That Frog. So very simple. I'm just telling you, this stuff is all stupid simple, but it's really, you can see it's an international bestseller, 8,720 ratings at a 4.7. This stuff, it largely influenced everything I teach you. So again, Psycho-Cybernetics, influenced by Cialdini, Goals, and Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy. Highly recommended as we begin this course. And again, if you mix reading and listening and all that, it's all good. Okay. All right. Let's stop our sharing here and let's go to, I'll have to go a little over time, but I will ask you if there are any questions that I can answer tonight. I know that's a lot to digest, but it's pretty simple concept stuff, right? So you're all muted, by the way, so you'll have to unmute if you want to ask me something. I see the chat. We got some stuff. Legendary speech, Andre. Bravo. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man. Okay. Hearing nothing, I'm going to let you all go. Okay. So appreciate everybody being here live tonight. And like I said, next week is Thanksgiving Eve here. So my druthers is to postpone it a week, but I'll let you know for sure during the week. Okay. So if you tune in and we're not here, it's just because of Thanksgiving, but we will be right back at it. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Appreciate you all. Thanks. You're welcome.